Grace, how is everyone doing? Thanks for joining us again with the Chasing Clarity Health and Fitness Podcast. It's me, my good friend Brandon Cruz. Today, do we have a topic for you guys? We're going to talk about all things metabolism, and we're going to kind of like start breaking it down from the education side. We're going to break it down real deep into the literature. This is Brandon's like pet baby. It's probably like he spends as much time on this as I do on copper, if you all know my obsession with
This is my wheelhouse.
It's his wheelhouse. So I'm going to be guiding it along as always. And, we'll be batting stuff back and forth from what we know in the trenches and compared to literature. But first, Brandon, man, how's your last week been before we get into this? And I know you're pumped. You got nicotine in the gums. You were hitting the bed. You were like just headbutting shit before we went live. Like it was out of control.
No, man, I'm having a incredible morning and an incredible week, to say the least, my friend. The last few months, I just want to express an immense amount of gratitude, not only to the audience, but to all my clients and stuff. I've been in the nutrition coaching game for 9 years. So, way earlier than a lot of people within this space. And the last 2 months have been the most productive months and the most, growth-filled months within my business of all. And I'm incredibly thankful and in a really good position because of all the work I've put in. So when you've taken and you've spent so much time and energy, and anyone that knows me or works with me or has even heard me on a podcast knows that everything I do, I believe in how you do anything is how you do everything. So when I come to a podcast, I'm prepared, or when I'm talking to clients, like I'm all in, man. And so I've invested so much time, energy, and effort into studying, into educating myself. I mean, I've spent over $150,000 in continuing education courses. I've taken, a good chunk of my income every year. And some years, all the income I made initially as a coach, and I've reinvested it into myself and into my education, because I believe that if you learn more, you could serve more. And I'm really seeing the fruits of my labor at this point in my career. And it's something that's incredibly gratifying. So other than that, man, it's been an incredible week. I'm looking forward to a great podcast. Like you mentioned, this is my wheelhouse. This is something that I've had to dive deep into because I was coaching back when, we're not going to go into this today, but we're going to talk about, this will be a full series. We'll talk about metabolic damage. Can you permanently, break your metabolism and all concepts like that. But this was something that I was encountering, especially with my female clients, left and right, especially over the last couple of years. And it's something it's so heavily promoted in this industry. People want to make you feel like you're damaged or you need to be fixed. And that's why you go to a coach. And I believe in coaching being an empowering and educational process. Not that I make my clients feel damaged or unfixable or that I have this solution for them. And that's what makes them come to me and work with me, because that's a scarcity mindset that you're reinforcing with people. And anyone that's listened to me, whether it be about energy flux or reverse dieting or any concept that I talk about, it's all about abundance mindset. I'm about the growth mindset. I'm about empowering other people and helping them grow. And I'm not looking for, just physique transformations, but lifestyle transformations. And that includes growing and developing as a person. You know what I mean? So I'm really looking forward to this podcast. But listen, let me hear about your week, my man.
Dude, it's been, it was good. It's lots the same. Like I'm a groundhog kind of day guy, I'm a full-time dad, have a couple businesses, get to do this podcast with you, get to do another one. Like I'm very, very lucky with all the stuff, but I agree with what you with the coaching, said about the coaching space and how everybody's trying to get everybody to believe that they're fucked up and that they can't get results unless they're willing to do like $4,000 protocols and labs and shit. I'm just like, well, cool. How's that work for the 45,000, K a year earner who really needs your help? Like, how do you help them? And so I agree with what you're saying, but man, my last week has been good. Lauren Conlon came to town. She was here Sunday. So I got to show her around. I showed her where I was going to put Iron House 2. And what I was thinking to do with that I was, we had a good, honest discussion. Do I go 20,000 square feet, Lauren, or do I go 25,000 square feet?
What did she say?
She said
25.
She said 25 because I want to do this other thing. So, what the goal is I want to have that ultimate auditorium, like I told you, about 150 seat. But I would love to be able to, like, say, for example, a coaching team was like, hey, we want to come to Nashville, use your gym and film content out of your area. Like, I'm going to soundproof it, put TVs in there. I want to make it ultimately where Relentless can do like live YouTube talk shows out of there, like with the coaches. Like we could actually do like a live, like in studio, spend the money and do it right. So I've got like a whole huge budget that I'm trying to line out and get ready for that. But other than that, dude, it's been pretty good. I'm looking forward to everybody coming in town for the PEC 6, which is June 4th. It's a Saturday. If you guys are interested in getting tickets, it's at the excellencecartel.com. I know Brandon's going to be there if you guys want a chance to meet us and hang out with us. The PEC6 is the Physique Education Collective is what we call it. Brandon is presented on it. We get a lot of the best coaches in the industry. It's just something that kind of like me and Jason wanted to do, and Jeff back in the day, where we wanted to put a bunch of different coaches out there. So it's cool. I mean, I've gotten to meet people like Brandon because of that. Now we have a podcast, which is all this awesome stuff. So guys, last quick thing, share us, like us on Spotify, leave us reviews on iTunes, all that good razz and jazz. We don't like to pimp that much because we'd rather spend our time talking to you, but the more you share it, the more you rate it, the more it helps us. So that being said, Brandon, let's crack our neck, baby. All right, let's get into this metabolism. So we have 7 different topics we're going to cover. And if we don't end up getting into it, because we try to make sure we provide quality in a certain amount of time that doesn't make your eyes glaze over, we will pick it up with a part 2. We're willing to do what we got to do to make sure this is correlated correctly. So, but we'll make sure it's done right. Brandon, what most people think metabolism is compared to what it really is. And then, of course, frame this how you want to start it and go.
Absolutely. So I find that when most people, even those that are professionals within our space, when they think and they talk about metabolism, they really only do so from an energy balance perspective, like in terms of how many calories they can eat per day. But that's actually only one component of your metabolism, as your metabolism encompasses much more than just your energy intake. In reality, if we actually look at metabolism and all it confers in its definition, it refers to the sum of all the work our cells are doing on an everyday basis and the many chemical processes your body goes through to keep you alive and the energy you expend through those processes.
All right. I think that's probably like the best definition you could give for it because it's textbook. I'm going. What does your metabolism encompass and measure, though?
All right, so this is where we really dig into the practical application side. So, I gave you the definition.
I want to pause for a second.
Absolutely.
You've been dealing with now more average Joes, average Jans, gym pop people. When they come to you, how do they think that their metabolism really is? Like, most of them think it's broken, that their thyroid sucks, and all this other stuff. So I think that there's like what we, because we are athletes, we train at a high level, we pursue high end, that top 0.1% of what we do in regards to our bodies. But 99.9% of people, what do you think metabolism is to them? How would you relate that to them in layman's terms?
Well, I'll tell you just from my own coaching perspective, a lot of times when I have lifestyle clients come to me, or even competitors, honestly, social media has made it so that we're constantly in this comparison act. And so a big thing with that is we have people flexing on the gram about how many calories they eat or what their macros are. And I'm hugely against that, because we have to consider the individuality of each person. And so with that, I find that many people think that, and that's what I was trying to refer to previously, that it's only about calorie intake. So people think, someone will come to me and say, I have a really slow metabolism. I can only eat this amount of calories, or I'll gain weight, or it takes me a very low amount of calories compared to, my friends or those that I train with, my training partner, to lose weight. And so it's always a comparison. It's never this objective, viewpoint on what metabolism is.
Fair.
And it always centers around food. Here's the thing. Yes, food is a major component of your metabolism, but your metabolism it doesn't just encompass calories and exercise. Metabolism encompasses everything, as almost every process and activity you engage in requires energy. So I'm going to go into what it encompasses in actuality and what it measures, because your metabolism is pretty much a measurement of various inputs and outputs from both your body, but also your external environment, which then determine your calorie needs and your calorie expenditure. And it's this adaptive and reactive system, which is never static, meaning it's constantly in a state of flux. So your metabolism is always changing based on various factors. Some of these include like how much you eat and whether you're eating in a deficit, if you're eating at maintenance calories, or if you're in a surplus, the macronutrient distribution of your diet, what food sources make up your diet, like the food quality, the micronutrient status of your diet, how frequently and how hard you train, how active you are on a daily basis, which is why I'm so into steps and, energy flux and things of that sort, how well you sleep, your stress levels, among so many other physiological and psychological factors. And that's where I see people miss the ball. They are not taking into consideration the other various inputs. It's not just about your calories that you eat or the calories that you burn. And how I try to get this across to clients that come to me. So when someone comes to me in that scenario, first of all, I want them to disregard the comparison. Don't worry about what anyone else is doing. You don't know the context of their life because you're only seeing what they eat. You're not seeing their training. You're not seeing their daily movement. You're not seeing their stress levels or their lack of stress. You're not seeing their sleep quality. You're not seeing when someone posts on the gram, hey, I eat 4,000 calories and I eat 600 grams of carbs, you don't even see the type of carbohydrates or the type of macronutrients or food sources that are making that up, what their micronutrient status is like, what their hormone levels are like in comparison to you. So you're looking at you're fixating on this one variable, which is the numbers. And that's where we really get into this dark hole, this black hole of looking at food by numbers. And that's why, yes, we need to know the macronutrients. We need to know the calories that you're eating, but it's not just about calories and macros, because there's so many things that miss the mark when you only consider macronutrients. And you look at food as like this paint by numbers system. Like, we don't eat macronutrients. We do not eat calories. We eat food. It's a food matrix we have to take into consideration. So when I do have someone come to me and they have a misunderstanding of metabolism, whether it be through their own comparison or honestly, a lot of fitness professionals, if you were to put them on the spot and ask them what metabolism is, what is the definition of metabolism, they would just say, oh, how much someone can eat and stay weight stable. But that's not it. So how I try to get this across is a good way to look at metabolism is as a thermometer, which reads and interprets the different external and internal factors within your life. So as your external environment changes, whether that be your physical activity levels, your stress levels, your sleep quality, so does the internal state of your metabolism and how it processes the food you're taking in and how it burns calories within that process. So it's important to realize your metabolism is never static. It's not like we get this calorie amount that you see on Instagram or you see off a calorie calculator, which is one of the many reasons we went into that topic, and you get this number and that's set and forget. And that's why coaching is such a dynamic process, because if you consider the fact, our metabolism is never static. And this is why your maintenance calorie intake is always a moving target, and it will change based on the training phase you're in, the state of energy balance you're in, the diet you were previously following. So were you in a deficit? It's going to change your maintenance level of calories. We know that. The amount of stress that you're dealing with, your sleep quality, among so many other variables. And a great example of how reactive and adaptive one's metabolism can be is how after a long fat loss phase, the calorie intake that you can consume to maintain your new lower body weight and body fat level is usually significantly lower than your maintenance intake was prior to starting that diet. And this is due to the many metabolic adaptations that come along with dieting, as well as the fact that you're now a lighter, leaner individual, which in and of itself lowers your resting metabolic rate and the amount of calories you burn per day. So really how I try to get it across is, metabolism is reactive, it's adaptive, and it's always considering all these sides of the equation. So as you manipulate one side, so your energy intake, it manipulates the other side. And a lot of people look at these as independent factors. Hey, I changed my diet, but I kept my activity levels the same. Well, if you lowered your calories, your energy expenditure, so the energy outside the energy balance equation, has been, changed, because they are not independent variables. They're called interdependent variables. So as one changes, the other changes. So we have to look at way beyond just numbers, and we have to really consider the entire picture. And that's where coaching comes into play, because I'm sure you could relate to the fact that, you have people come to you, they come to you at one intake, and you can build them up. You can use kind of like my high energy flux model. And I've had people come to me that were maintaining their body weight at what they thought was 1,200 calories. And now they're on 2,200 calories, and they're maintaining the same or a better body composition because we've upregulated. We've put more energy into the system, and it's increased their energy expenditure. So body weight's the same, but their quality of life and all the inputs of their metabolism have been upregulated.
I can also boot this in there. I have about right at 100 clients on roster, and I can tell you that maybe 10 have freak metabolisms and they're like eating high amounts. Most people have to like get used to the idea of like, hey, like for example, I weigh 180 pounds, right? I'm dropping weight on 2,700 calories. That's right around there for me. That's still a lot of weight. That's still a lot of calories for a 180-pound person to eat. And people don't think about it like that, right? Like, and that's like some of the stuff about the hunger hacks we talked about in the last episode. But I like the way you said that. But I think it's important to clarify, what else would you say that your metabolism encompasses? And like, most importantly, what does your metabolism measure?
Okay, so there are 4 components of metabolism. And so, when most people think of their metabolism, what they're really speaking about or what they're referring to is their metabolic rate, which is one part of your metabolism. But metabolism is this 4-component system that together equal your total daily energy expenditure or the total amount of calories you burn per day. And this total comes from both your resting and non-resting energy expenditure, meaning the calories you burn just to keep your body functioning at rest, or pretty much just to keep you alive, and then any calories that you burn through any sort of physical activity you engage in. So this TDE is comprised of your basal metabolic rate, the thermic effect of food, also called diet-induced thermogenesis, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, and your exercise activity thermogenesis. So those are the four components.
Okay. Now, I want to break this out a little bit. So you're talking to your clients about resting metabolic rate, and you're trying to get that across. How would you, what are some examples, like people that they could maybe ascertain their resting metabolic rate? I know we discussed it before, but wanted to bring it up to kind of clarify real quick as we move through it.
Yeah, so you're only going to be able to ascertain or really get an accurate measure of your basal metabolic rate. So we're going to separate resting and basal metabolic rate. They're usually used interchangeably, but if you actually look into literature, the difference is that resting metabolic rate is generally 10% higher than your basal metabolic rate. And the reason for that is resting metabolic rate actually includes the thermic effect of feeding, which accounts for about 10% of your total daily energy expenditure. So we're going to separate those out so that we have this 4-component model. So basal metabolic rate would have to be measured like in a lab. It'd be with indirect calorimetry. It'd be with the hood. It'd be those things that we spoke about with Lauren in not the previous episode, but 2 episodes ago. So that's how you would get it. But really what I try to get across to my clients is, and we're going to go into this, like the variability between people and their basal metabolic rate, because often what people refer to is they're like, oh, someone's metabolic must have a much quicker metabolic rate than I do. And they don't really understand what resting or what basal metabolic rate is. And basal metabolic rate refers to the amount of energy you burn at rest just to keep the lights on and to keep your organs functioning properly. So it's basically the amount of calories you burn if you were to lay in bed all day and not engage in any activity. So it's literally just your baseline level, which is why it's called basal. It's the fundamental or the foundational level of calories you burn. And it accounts for roughly 50 to 60% of the average person's total daily energy expenditure. Now, here's the thing. Your basal metabolic rate is mostly determined by your body weight and your body composition. And it's most heavily impacted by the amount of fat-free mass you have, which includes both your muscle and your internal organs, which are both the most metabolically active tissues in the body. So we see in research that there's both a linear relationship between your level of fat-free mass, which includes muscle, and your basal metabolic rate, and then also your total daily energy expenditure. So these are all tied into the equation. So if you were to, per se, and I talk to clients about this, if you were to increase your total body mass, especially through the addition of muscle, which is an energy costly tissue to build and maintain, you would have your BMR increase as your body would require more energy to function and would burn more calories per day to do so. However, this also works in the opposite fashion, which is why we always have to consider, hey, listen, you start eating less, it's going to impact the energy expenditure side of the equation. So energy in impacts energy out. So if you were to lose weight or you were to lose muscle mass or even body fat, your resting metabolic rate will decrease as a result of you being lighter and needing less energy to keep the lights on and to function at rest. And a lot of people don't understand that. They're like, well, why am I burning less? Well, you're a lighter, leaner individual, so you don't need as much energy. That's just, logistical. And then we also see in research, there's specific research by this researcher named Hopkins, that fat-free mass, which includes your muscle, accounts for 69% of the variance we see between the basal metabolic values of 2 individuals. So over 2/3 of the reason why someone may have a higher metabolic rate than you is purely down to their level of muscle mass. So when you see someone that's eating a ton more calories, you look at a bodybuilder, like there's always these examples where I live in Jersey, and I lived in North Jersey for a long time. I used to go to Beth Francis Powerhouse. People would always refer to Juan Morel and be like, oh, he can eat whatever he wants. He eats 6,000 calories a day. He eats 20,000 calorie challenges. The guy was like 285 on stage. Like you can't compare as like a lifestyle bodybuilder, like a hobby builder, and be like, oh, I'm a light heavyweight. Why can Juan Morel, who's 90 pounds heavier than me, eat, twice the amount of calories? Like you have to be really realistic with this and realize that there's not this big difference between, especially your metabolic rate in terms of basal metabolic rate. There's a big difference between your muscle mass and how much activity you're doing per day.
Okay. Now, good point. How much you're doing, and I needs the last one, but let's talk about activity level. Let's elaborate on this, because this is a variant that like a variant that most do not get, like in a variable, should I say, I guess not variant, but variable. The most do not get. What I mean by that is like they'll be like, oh, I'm active. And I'll be like, okay, what do you do? Like I play kickball on Sundays. I'm like, okay, like what do you do during the day? So like, what are you defining activity like? And like, I know that there's these different times multipliers and things like that. So how do you break that out if you're to someone who's listening, you know, to our podcast? Like how would you define the activity levels and help them kind of like understand that further?
So there's two components of what's called physical activity expenditure. So that is comprised of your EAT, which is your exercise activity thermogenesis, and then also your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And that's where a lot of people conflate the two. They don't really realize, they think that exercise contributes to so much more of their total calories that they burn per day than they actually do. But exercise activity thermogenesis is defined as, the energy that we expend through intentional exercise. And although a lot of people think it makes up a large percentage of the calories they burn per day, it actually only accounts for 5% of your total daily energy expenditure. So it's a small component. And that's because your intentional exercise, think about it, just in the context of the average person, Jeff. What is the average person that you work out in the gym? I'll tell you, for my clients, it's probably 1 hour a day, 5 times a week. So out of the course of a day, 1 hour, think about if you're up, say you sleep ideally, which most people that I work with don't sleep 8 hours per day, but let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say they sleep 8 hours a day, they have 16 hours throughout the course of the day. Well, if you're only exercising for 1 hour a day, that's 6% of your day. So another, 4% of your day actually. So another 5%, 96%, you are doing other activities. So a lot of times people think they're burning all these calories in exercise, and exercise is great. Training, weight training, it's incredible, but we weight train not to burn calories. We weight train for the adaptations to both our physique in terms of developing muscle and strength. And that's what it's best used for, because at most, the most we see in the literature is that we burn about 3 calories per minute of weight training exercise. So over the course of an hour of exercise, you're only burning about 180 calories, probably at max. Whereas the rest of the course of the day, we could burn up to 2,000 calories per day in NEAT. And that's really where the rest of our physical activity expenditure comes from. And it's NEAT. And a lot of people don't, they think of NEAT and they think about it of one of two ways. They either think about it as just fidgeting and stuff, or just, their steps. But there's so many things that a lot of us don't think about that, comprise NEAT. And that's why it's the most overlooked part. So NEAT literally accounts for all the calories you burn in a day that aren't contributed to by your basal metabolic rate in your intentional training sessions. So this includes both your conscious and subconscious actions, movements, and behaviors, some of which are under your control and some you just do naturally. So for instance, when it comes to like our conscious and voluntary activities, this would include walking around and hitting steps. It would include activities of daily living, like anything, whether it's for your job that you have to stay standing, or if you're a clerk or a desk worker, whatever it may be. It includes climbing stairs, household chores like cleaning, doing the dishes, vacuuming, outdoor chores like gardening or mowing the lawn. Hell,
Yeah,
even
it's just
like
not steps.
no, it's not. No,
Yeah, it's just
honestly,
not
people don't
steps,
think
yeah.
about it like this. Like, honestly, Jeff, if you think about it, like even intimate activities with your partner count towards NEAT, because that's calories you're
It's
burning.
true.
That is an intentional exercise. So if
Best
you guys are
calorie
getting
burner.
after it,
Best calorie
exactly.
burner.
So
Yeah.
pretty much everything that you do physically, besides the purposeful training you do in the gym, can be defined as NEAT. And a lot of people think about it in this black and white thing. This is either NEAT or it's not NEAT. And then from like a subconscious level, we have involuntary actions that burn calories that no one thinks about. So these include like maintaining your posture, fidgeting and twitching. Like what I'm doing right now, I'm talking with my hands. For anyone on YouTube, they're seeing that I'm moving like a
motherfucker moves.
Blinking, like stuff like that. Anyone that saw my energy flex presentation at the PC, you guys know that I'm moving. So it's,
you made me nervous.
Yeah, when I'm especially in a high energy state, meaning that I am in a calorie surplus, I'm moving. So the thing with NEAT is it's the most variable between individuals, and it's also the most impactful and modifiable component of your energy expenditure. And from the average person, it accounts for 20 to 25% of their total daily energy expenditure. So about a quarter of the calories that they're burned. But in some people that, and those that are highly active, NEAT can account for up to 50% of your total daily energy expenditure. And that's that lever that we can pull, that activity aspect, because the rest, like your basal metabolic rate, it's pretty set based on your level of muscle mass. It's not going to account for more than 50 to 60%. Then also the last one that we haven't covered was the thermic effect of feeding.
Yeah, that was what I was trying to bring up, like liquid versus whole food, the importance of eating fiber. There's a lot of good stuff that you got to talk about because, eating a protein shake, there is, I'm at the age now of 41 that I'm going to get my protein. I get it. Shakes is fine by me. But if I was trying to grow optimally, food matters and I'd be shoving food. So I want you to break that down, man, the thermogenic effect of food and all that. I think it's important for people to understand differences.
Yeah, so the thermic effect of food is also referred to as diet-induced thermogenesis. So if you see in the literature, a lot of them, it will be referred to or abbreviated as DIT. And this is the energy your body burns through thermogenesis or heat to digest, assimilate, and metabolize the food you eat. So like I said, it's not like these independent variables. So think about it. Calories in and calories out are not independent variables like I keep trying to get across. But we're going to think about it on the conceptual level. Like when you put food in, your body has to go through the process of burning calories just to get those nutrients out of that food. So this accounts for approximately 10% of the total daily energy expenditure. So the amount of calories you burn per day, but this is based on the macronutrient split of your diet, as each macronutrient has a different thermic effect when consumed. So for example, like Jeff just mentioned about protein, protein has the highest thermic effect of feeding at 20 to 30%. So for instance, if you get 100 calories from protein, you generally only net out 70, 80 calories out of that. So there's this calorie cushion essentially. It's like this funnel, this caloric funnel, we're burning more calories for eating protein, which is why there's so much evidence that shows that higher protein diets not only help with increasing your energy expenditure because they help with building muscle mass, but also because they're burning more calories in the process of digestion. On the other hand, we have carbs. Carbs have a thermic effect of feeding of 5 to 10% on average. Whereas then for fat has a thermic effect of feeding between 0 and 3%, depending on the fat source. So here's the thing. If you took, a lot of times people will say, a calorie is a calorie. Yes, it is. Calories are a unit of measurement. However, all sources of calories are not equal. And that's where a lot of people go wrong. They think that it's just a calorie equation. It's just plain calorie math. And that's why I'm not about the numbers. I'm also about the food sources, because we cannot compare 100 calories from a lean protein source to 100 calories from fat. Because if we're looking at it from a dietary perspective, way beyond, if we went into micronutrients and things of that sort, which we'll do a full deep dive on, it's going to be completely different profiles. But say you get 100 calories from chicken breast or 100 calories from Crisco. You know what I mean? Two different, a pure fat source and primarily a pure lean protein source. For those 100 calories that you get from that chicken, you're only going to really, absorb into your body 70 calories of what's called metabolizable energy, meaning energy you're going to actually absorb. Whereas with the Crisco, you're going to absorb 100 of those calories. So just right then and there, let's extrapolate that out over the course of 1,000 calories from fat a day compared to 1,000 calories of protein per day. When you get 1,000 calories of protein per day, you're going to only absorb about 700 to 800 calories of that. Whereas the fat, you're going to purely absorb, 970 to 1,000 of those calories. So there's so many things that we need to take into consideration. And that's where metabolism goes way beyond just what you eat. And that's why we're breaking this down for you guys, so you understand all the components that make up metabolism and really what it encompasses.
And I think we covered all four of them really well. I don't think there's anything else I want to chime in. I think it was done really well. Next one, the differences in the calories we burn per day.
I want to go
sexy.
back.
Sounds real sexy.
No, I want to go back one. You know why? Because I want to talk about, I did hit on this in the intro, but I want to talk about how, because people think that metabolism is a static thing. And I want to talk about how adaptive and reactive metabolism actually is. Because a lot of people, they see it in real life, but they don't really realize it. So we all know people who eat a ton just to maintain their weight, let alone to gain muscle mass. And these are the individuals who, if they miss a few meals, they'll automatically lose a couple pounds due to how high their energy expenditure is during a building phase. On the opposite side, there are many of us who struggle to lose weight and need to significantly drop calories to lose body fat in order to get into the type of shape that we're aiming for. And now these situations are examples of having an adaptive metabolism, which applies both on the way up and the way down on the weight and dieting continuum. So those with adaptive metabolisms have a body that's essentially like very efficient at defending against body weight change, which includes both weight gain and weight loss. And this efficiency is what causes these individuals to stay around the same weight, as their metabolism essentially keeps their body at this homeostatic set point. So that's where we hear about body fat set point or body fat settling point and things of that sort. And what we have to realize is that all of the components of energy expenditure can adapt to both under and overfeeding. But in both cases, the largest adaptations come from need, both in terms of the down regulation and up regulations. So for instance, today we're going to talk about overfeeding. So we're going to talk about when you're in a surplus, what happens to your metabolism, what happens to your total daily energy expenditure. And later on within this series, I'm going to take a deep dive, deeper than anyone's ever done on a podcast, I'll tell you that for sure, about metabolic adaptation and how the body and how your metabolism responds to periods of being in a calorie deficit. So in the case of overfeeding, we see in overfeeding studies that when people are given a calorie surplus for a consistent period of time, multiple aspects of their total daily energy expenditure will increase. So when it comes to the thermic effect of food, this is the easiest one to conceptualize, because eating more calories will cause your body to burn more calories through the thermic effect of feeding, as an increase in food means you have more nutrients to play with. So your body has to put in more work towards breaking down and digesting, this additional calories. Now, when it comes to your basal metabolic rate, we will generally see an uptick, so an increase in basal metabolic rate in the face of overfeeding, especially as your body weight increases. Because remember, guys, like I said, one of the biggest indicators for, one of the biggest contributing factors for basal metabolic rate is someone's body weight and their body composition. And this increase is even more significant if you gain muscle, because like I said, muscle is metabolically active tissue. So if you gain more muscle, you'll slightly increase your basal metabolic rate. But the average increase in BMR, that we see in overfeeding studies, they've taken overfeeding studies and they've put, it's usually an 8-week period where they put subjects in 1,000 calorie surplus over their maintenance. And they do this daily for at least 8 weeks. And the average that we see in the literature is a 10% increase in basal metabolic rate. And honestly, the largest that I've ever seen is a 15% increase in response to a large and significant surplus. So think about it. You got 15%, but the average was 10% increase in your basal metabolic rate, but you ate 1,000 calories more per day. So that's a massive surplus. Most people, if you're trying to put on lean mass, you're not eating that much more, especially during a building phase, you're working your way up. And we can see an increase in how efficiently we burn calories during exercise when we eat more, as we have more energy on board. So this is going to affect our exercise activity thermogenesis. So when you put more energy into the system, and this is what I always talk about with energy flux, when you put more in, you can get more out. And the reason for that is because if you have more energy availability, you're putting in more calories, more fuel into your system, your body's going to be less thrifty with how it burns calories. But generally, this is only a small increase, especially if your training volume remains the same. So if you go from a dieting scenario, you increase your calories, or you're at maintenance and you increase your calories and you keep training volume the same, you're going to get a little bit more out calorie-wise, but you're not going to get this substantial increase. But when we look at overfeeding studies that monitor changes in meat, this is shown to be the aspect of our total daily energy expenditure that is responsible for the most significant adaptations, especially when it comes to upregulation. So really what this means is meat is the largest component that responds to both over and underfeeding and accounts for how many calories you burn within the context of both dieting and then also building.
Differences in the calories we burn every day.
All right, so this is going to be in reference to total daily energy expenditure.
Yeah,
So I want to talk about the totality, what the evidence shows for the totality of how many, what difference do we see between individuals on their total daily energy expenditure. So we know that there's a large variability between the amount of calories one person can eat as compared to another, as we've all known two individuals of a similar weight and level of muscle mass who can maintain their weight eating a drastically different amount of food. So we've seen those people, I'm sure everyone has them in their gym or in their life where, it's someone the similar size to you, but they can eat 2,000 calories more. And that's why I'm always, coming back to the fact that don't do calorie comparisons. Don't worry about what anyone else is doing. Stay in your lane and, stick to what you need to do to make progress. But we see this actually in the literature, and it's taken a long time to really have enough evidence to really report on this. But last year, a study led by Dr. Herman Ponzer assessed energy expenditure across the life course. And the main finding of this study was that we don't see a reduction in total daily energy expenditure until after 60 years of age, as there's a linear relationship between your fat-free mass and your total daily energy expenditure. And generally, we can hold on to a large amount of our fat-free mass until the age of 60. However, after that, we actually see both an atrophy in muscle mass due to anabolic resistance, which comes with older age, but also we start losing metabolically active tissue in terms of our organs, which we have to realize, like our heart, our liver, these are powerhouses in terms of how many calories we burn per day. Here's the thing though, if you're a nerd like me, you dug deeper into the literature. So I'll tell you, when you dig deeper into the actual figures of the study and analyze the energy expenditure values, you can see that there's a massive variability in how many calories people of the same fat-free mass are burning. So although total daily energy expenditure, scales up with fat-free mass, that doesn't mean that those with the same exact amount of fat-free mass will have the same amount of total daily energy expenditure. So just because two people have the same amount of muscle does not mean that they're going to burn the same amount of calories per day. So in this specific study, you can look at some of the figures within the study, and it shows that there are individuals in this data spread with 60 kilograms of fat-free mass. So I'm going to give you an example of one of the figures that's in there. So you see two people within 60 kilograms of fat-free mass, and there's a large amount of people that are burning 2,000 calories per day at 60 kilograms of fat-free mass, and then others averaging 6,000 calories of burn per day. So you can see a threefold difference between those of the same lean body mass. And now here's the thing. A lot of people are going to point to be like, oh, I knew there was fast metabolism. Here's the thing, guys. You have to realize that this study was looking at their total daily energy expenditure. So it's referring to the total amount of calories burned in a day, which isn't to be confused with the resting metabolic rate, because the resting metabolic rate or their basal metabolic rate is only 50% of that. So, it's not like two people that have the same BMR are going to have, total daily energy expenditures that differ by 4,000 calories, but they can due to their lifestyle. And that's what makes the difference. So although lean body mass is the biggest contributor to our basal metabolic rate, people of the same lean body mass can have vastly different total daily energy expenditures, which is mostly due to two things. It's due to genetic variability and the differences in their NEAT levels. And this is why we shouldn't look at calories. We shouldn't ever look at the calories others consume during a diet to lose fat or during a building phase to gain muscle as a reference point to what you should be doing, because if you're just looking at someone's food, you don't know what else is comprised. You don't know what else they're doing throughout the course of the day. It's not like you're tracking, their physical activity on a daily basis from the time they wake up till the time they go to bed. So you might have someone and you see what they do in the gym, and then you also see what they consume on the gram, or you see what they eat at the gym post-workout, but you don't know anything about what they're doing throughout the course of the day.
That's very true. That's very true. Most people don't realize how lazy they are until they really start tracking it. And that's why they just don't get it. Like they don't realize that. I use the term lazy just because most people always refer to themselves. I'm just lazy. I'm like,
Jeff,
to some degree true.
Jeff, we've seen in the literature that there are overestimations, that people overestimate in certain literature by up to 300 to 400% over the amount of calories they burn per day. And now the average is over 50%. So on average, if you ask someone how active they are, they're going to give you a value that's 50% higher than they actually are. So if they tell you, hey, I do 15,000 steps per day, in actuality, they do 10,000 steps per day. And I know that because I've had so many clients that would tell me, hey, I'm really active. They had never tracked their steps. I get their step count and I say, well, give me a number, something, and they always throw out the 10,000 steps per day. Then I get their data back over the first 1 to 2 weeks when I stabilize their program. And I say, listen, I just want you to go through your activities of daily living, the cardio you generally do or not do, the activities that you do throughout the course of the day, if you go on walks, if you don't go on walks, what you do throughout your occupational habits, so what you do within work. And then they come back to me and it's like 4,000 steps per day. And they're like, I had no idea I was so inactive. You know what I mean? Especially in today's modern age, because before COVID, the average American was doing 5,200 steps per day, right around there. Now, think about it. The average American in 2020, this study was done in 2020 prior to the pandemic, they were working out of an office. So they were commuting into an office. They had some more activity. They had to get up around the office. Now, most people are working from home. So the longest that they're going is to the kitchen and to the refrigerator. So they're getting, a measly 1,000 to 2,000 steps per day. And I'll tell you, if I wasn't very conscious and I didn't track my things, I didn't do walks and laps around the gym, or I didn't purposely go on walks after every meal, I would never be able to maintain 15,000 steps per day because I'm stuck at a computer the vast majority of my day.
There was actually a study that came out that showed that millennials gained 41 pounds during the first year of COVID as well.
Ooh.
Yep.
That's immense.
Yep. I'll tell you the one group that's always active with steps, single moms to young kids. Boy, man, catching those kids around the house, that one's not hard. I like just let the kid go and just have to, go. You'll be fine. You'll get a bunch of steps. Like, man, that's so accurate. I'm like, yeah, you don't have to worry about that component, honey. You just need to eat. It's usually what you get on that.
Absolutely. We just got to fuel them.
Yeah, just got to fuel
lower their stress.
Yeah, exactly. But we talked a little bit about metabolic rate and the differences and so forth, but we do have it as a topic about talking about the metabolic rate between individuals. Is there anything you want to clean up there? A little bit areas you want to go down, etc. We can go.
Oh, believe me,
you're gonna throw out the fucking D word, damaged. We're gonna throw it out there.
We're not gonna go into that now.
We're
gonna do a full masterclass in metabolic adaptation because there's a lot of mythology around metabolic damage, a lot of about breaking your metabolism, and I need at least an hour of a deep dive. So I don't want to take us down a course because Jeff, as you know, I have ADD. So once I go down a different path, we're never getting back.
I just want to point out, you said that this is mythology.
It is mythology. So here's the thing. We're going to cover this in depth, but we have literature since the 1940s disproving metabolic damage. since the 1940s. Yet we still have coaches in 2022. Come on, guys, that you're still selling the same crock of bullshit to clients to make them feel like they're dependent on you. So I'm going to break that down in a future podcast. But for all those out there interested in that, just so you know, rest assured, we're going to cover this, but there is no such thing as metabolic damage. There is a physiological phenomenon called metabolic adaptation, but it's A, somewhat preventable, B, it doesn't affect every single individual, and C, it's reversible as soon as you get back to energy balance or maintenance calories. So we're going to talk about that very in depth. But when it comes to differences in basal metabolic rate, I really want to cover this because we often do have people that point to others and say, you know, they have a faster metabolism than me, or I have a slow metabolism. And it's always within the context of comparison. And I'm big on the mental framing, because we actually have literature that the placebo effect or the nocebo effect of your psychology, what you believe, can actually influence the physiological effect that you have on your body. So for instance, they've done studies, and this is a completely different route. So I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole too in depth with the study, but there are studies that have looked at individuals and have asked them, are you active or are you inactive? And those, even doing the same activity. So it was done in New York City maids working in hotels. And they asked those in the
I saw
population.
That study.
Yeah, they asked those, it's by Leah Crum. And they asked those in that population, listen, do you do a lot of activity and do you not? And those who reported that they did more activity and that they felt that what they did as a job was highly physical active, and it also constituted exercise, in an indirect form, they had better blood markers. And the reason for that was because physiologically or psychologically, they believed they were doing exercise and they were doing activity that benefited their health. And that's where we saw the difference, because then they did a crossover trial where they put, for 4 weeks, they informed half of the maids, listen, what you're doing as a job is really good exercise. It actually constitutes the Surgeon General's recommendation per day. It's really good. You should see body weight improvements, things of that sort. And then in the other half of the group, they didn't say anything. They didn't educate them. They didn't tell them about anything about their job. And then they had them take blood markers and things of that sort. And in the group that was informed about their daily activity, yet kept doing the same activity, for the rest of that month, they saw improvements in blood pressure, resting heart rate, blood glucose, as well as their perceptions of the enjoyment of their work and the benefits that it had on their health. So they started viewing it in the fact that, hey, this is really beneficial for me. So guys, realize that we cannot separate psychology from physiology. So if you believe you have a slow metabolism, or you have a damaged metabolism, or you listen to someone out there within the popular space that says, listen, if you have these side effects or you have these symptoms, you have this, you are putting a self-limiting belief on yourself that can impact your actual physiological response and your health. So despite, many believing that they struggle to lose fat and weight as compared to others because their metabolic rate is much slower than someone else, we actually don't see a massive difference in BMR between individuals. So in most of the literature, we generally see a difference of only 2 to 8% in BMR between individuals of the same age, body composition, and weight. And research that specifically looks at the variability of BMR between individuals, meaning how much do they differ, we see that 68% of individuals are within 5% of the population average for their basal metabolic rate. So for instance, if the average BMR for someone your size is 1,800 calories per day, close to 70% of individuals will have a BMR between 1,710 calories and 1,890 calories. So this is a really small gap, guys. Realize this is 90 calories, give or take. So it's not this drastic difference. And this is the vast majority of people fall within that bell curve. And so most of the differences we see in why some people can maintain their body weight or diet on higher calories is actually due to differences in their NEAT levels.
Yeah, actually, that's great lead into our next one, because that is actually the topic of the final one. We'll talk about NEAT in individuals. Now, I wanted to get your take before we wrap it up on what your thought, like gut health and hormones and stuff like that, played in terms, like what the literature shows on stuff like that. Is there any good stuff that people could go find out information? Because, you do hear that thrown out there a lot in conjunction with metabolism. And I think they're very separate things, because I've been teasing and playing with it for a long time now. And I just think they're separate things you treat separately.
They are separate things. So I will tell you, a lot of times people say, oh, it's just calories or it's just hormones, and they are interrelated in terms of your response, but it's not like one of these in isolation besides thyroid will really impact the amount of calories you burn per day. It's going to affect your total physiological health. So for instance, with actually, I just looked into this recently. Within thyroid, we see that in people that suffer from Graves' disease, so they literally have no thyroid production, that restoring thyroid with exogenous thyroid supplementation. Now, keep in mind, this is prescription, but getting them back to euthyroid levels, meaning normal active thyroid levels, getting them back with T3 treatment, it can increase metabolic rate or their basal metabolic rate by 25%. Now, keep in mind, basal metabolic rate only accounts for about 50% of the calories you burn per day. So in totality, that's about a 12.5% increase in the total daily energy expenditure. But it's not due to the fact that thyroid is this super fat burning hormone, but it's due to the fact that thyroid, the actual thyroid hormone, docks to every cell receptor in the body. So it communicates with every cell. So here's the thing. A lot of people will say, oh, I just added thyroid in, my basal or my total daily energy expenditure will raise 12.5%. Just because of that. It's not bad in isolation. Let's think about the side effects of being hypothyroid. And I know this because I've worked with many people that have it. First of all, yes, you have a lowering of your resting metabolic rate. That's not something, or your basal metabolic rate. That's not something you're really going to notice. But you are going to notice lower energy levels. You are going to notice that you probably have some issues with gut health because there is an interaction between thyroid and gut.
100%.
There is a reaction between thyroid and your ability to synthesize muscle protein. So muscle protein synthesis, one of the key regulators in that is T3. So we need that to be able to accrue muscle tissue, to build muscle tissue.
Yep.
So having a downregulated thyroid is going to limit your body's ability to build muscle. So now you're going to have a lower metabolic rate because of that, or lower total daily energy expenditure. So just by adding in that thyroid and replacing what is lost, now you're going to have better energy levels. Your NEAT's going to increase. Your training is going to increase. Your digestion is going to improve. Also, you're going to increase muscle mass. So all these components are what lead to increases in resting or in total daily energy expenditure. It's not in isolation. We have to remember that every single input affects the entire equation. So it's never in isolation. So, we have to always think about in the larger context. There are downstream actions. It's like a domino effect. So, anytime we affect one side of the equation, we affect the other side. So with hormones, with digestion, they're all going to affect one another. For instance, if you don't have adequate hydrochloric acid production, you're not going to be able to break down and assimilate protein as well. So that's going to impact the thermic effect of feeding. It also may just impact your ability to get down adequate protein levels. So now here's the thing. If you have low stomach acid production and you don't supplement with HCl or something you don't address that, your digestive health is going to be downregulated. So now maybe you'll be less susceptible to eating protein. So now you're not maintaining or building as much muscle tissue. You're not recovering as well from your training. So all these other aspects, it's not like we just put in one thing and it affects one side of the equation. It affects so many other downstreams. It's affecting training performance, recovery, muscle mass, muscle retention. So that's how it really increases your total daily energy expenditure. But it's never just, hey, I fix gut health and it's going to increase someone's rest or basal metabolic rate, or I address hormones and it's going to increase someone's basal metabolic rate. It's also about behaviors. And we see that within the testosterone replacement therapy literature, where it has so many downstream actions in terms of behaviors. People are more likely to be more active. They're happier. They're more energetic. So now they're engaging in more activities, such as training more often. So it's not like they put in testosterone, they automatically built more muscle. No, they did more actions that were conducive to building muscle.
Yep. I also wish they had pulled the reverse T3 in that study, where they were giving them T3 to see what happened on the reverse T3 side, because, that's a sign that your metabolism could be under distress, either through starvation, inflammation, your liver, lack of iron. And that's a big thing to consider too. The liver, and the important part of everything, does convert 70% of your inactive thyroid hormone to thyroid hormone. So
up to 80%.
Yep. It's a pretty interesting. I was always gone with 70 because I've seen that repeated more in the literature that I've read. And a lot of people don't understand like just how the food you eat, to the pesticides, I'm one of them weird people. So, but all that does slow down your liver, and then you get down, so a lot of it does work in play. But I agree that the metabolism is a separate issue from the other stuff. And I'm glad you took the time to clarify that out. You want to know something really neat that I got into on the thyroid? Just a little hodgepodge to the side. There's been a few things I've read that correlate like your thyroid more to depression and anxiety, especially bipolar. They think people, when they get when you have Hashimoto's and you get the swings, that they get a lot of the bipolar, and they wonder if like bipolar is actually everything to do with the thyroid and depression and all that, and nothing to do at all with the serotonin molecule. Like these people, like there's a couple of doctors out there like disproving the serotonin theory for depression and anxiety. And it's pretty interesting when you go down these different holes. I'll have to forward you some stuff, but
Absolutely. No, I'd love to look into that, because if we think about it, we produce more serotonin in the gut than anywhere else, but we
Yep.
also see within people that suffer from hypothyroidism issues within the gut.
Yep.
So could that be all intertwined? Could it be a downstream action of a down regulation in thyroid that's causing issues with serotonin, which is also causing other neurotransmitter imbalances, which are leading to depression, also lowered energy, more lethargia, things that are going to exacerbate the side effects of anxiety and of depression.
Dude, I'm reading this book about parasites, and it talks about like the gut microbiome and that they don't think we're as in charge as we are. And they, a perfect example is this thing is called toxo. I can't remember the last part to it, but a lot of it comes from like cats, like, and litter boxes and things like that. And there's this, they think that they've proven in some of these studies that if you're infected with this, that you're going to be more inclined to be riskier habits. And they've also noticed in the studies that people who are HIV positive at end of days, they get very, very sexual. And they wonder if that's the disease way of trying to take over the person to keep spreading and replicating the disease out. And it's this whole book. I mean, dude, it's really fucking weird, and I love it.
This is why people ask you the weird questions.
Yeah, that's why I get the weird
ones with me. When I think about increasing sexual function as well as increasing energy and risky behaviors, I think about Robert Sapolsky's information on testosterone, because that's what testosterone has been proven to do. But that's definitely interesting.
Dude, I'll have to show you the book. I'll pass you the book title. Like, it's only a 220 page read, but this like lady just went down and started interviewing these scientists who study these crazy ass parasites and stuff, and just how they like infect and what they'll do to be able to keep replicating, and how we're infected with some of them is crazy. Like, it was wild. But the last one we got, I think we need to clarify and cut up like the differences in NEAT between individuals. And you want
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when it comes to your total daily energy expenditure, this is the aspect. NEAT is the big lever. This is the key. NEAT is the most variable aspect of your total daily energy expenditure, and it's the one that differs the most between two different people. So Jeff and I could have vastly different total daily energy expenditures. And this is also the component of your total daily energy expenditure that's most impacted by adaptive thermogenesis. So it's the changes in NEAT that are the aspect of our energy expenditure, which are most highly related to whether we lose or gain weight during a deficit or surplus, based on how our NEAT levels adjust in response to changes in our nutrition, our training, and our lifestyle. So research by Black showed that calories burned through NEAT can vary by up to 2,000 calories between individuals of the same body weight, the same sex, and the same body composition. So two people of the pretty much the same size and body weight can have completely different total daily energy expenditures just due to their NEAT. So one person can, for instance, one person can maintain their body composition on 2,000 calories per day, while another with the same type of body composition can maintain that level of body fat and muscle on 4,000 calories per day, which is one of the many reasons why I'm a huge believer in this high energy flux lifestyle, because I really want to get my clients into a position where I can get them to eat the most amount of food possible to maintain their body weight. And I do that by having them eat more and move more, because I'd rather them be in that state of abundance and really in a state of, high energy, and both in terms of their energy turnover as well as their energy intake, than being in this low flux state that they have to maintain a really low calorie intake just to stay weight stable. And probably the best study that illustrates the effect NEAT can have on whether someone gains or lose weight was an overfeeding study by Levine. And Levine is a researcher that actually was the one that termed or coined NEAT. And he's done an immense amount of studies on overfeeding, on NEAT. And he's one of my favorite researchers. But in one of his overfeeding studies in the 90s, he basically took healthy young individuals and he found their maintenance calorie intake by measuring their total daily energy expenditure. So this was in a metabolic ward, so it was extremely accurate. And then what he did was he overfed them by 1,000 calories every day for 8 weeks. So over the course of those 8 weeks, these participants ate 56,000 more calories over their baseline intake, which if we were to go solely based off that 3,500 calorie rule, which equals a pound of fat, they should have gained 16 pounds of fat just from that increase in calories. But here's the thing, like I keep saying, energy intake, or the calories inside the equation, impact the calories outside of the equation. So what the researchers did was they measured their fat mass, their fat-free mass, their weight, as well as all the components of their total daily energy expenditure. So they looked at the thermic effect of feeding, they looked at their basal metabolic rate, and they looked at their NEAT levels, because it was in a lab setting, so they didn't have them do any intentional exercise. So they looked at all the components that they were actually engaged in. And they did this throughout the course of the study to see what was accounting for the difference in fat gain between subjects. And what they saw was the response people have to overfeeding is extremely variable, as some people react to an increase in calorie intake by increasing their calorie expenditure so they move more. And it's what they showed was it was pretty much just through subconscious movement, so NEAT. So for example, one person during this 8 weeks of overfeeding only gained 0.8 pounds of fat, whereas another gained 9 pounds of pure fat during those 8 weeks of continuous overfeeding. So there was a massive difference between the fat gain between participants. And the researchers explained this massive difference between the individuals was shown to be from their NEAT levels, because when they looked at all the other components of their total daily energy expenditure, such as their basal metabolic rate and the thermic effect of feeding and fat gain, there was no relationship between BMR and fat gain, nor TEF and fat gain. However, when it came to NEAT, they saw what's considered an inversely linear relationship between how much fat someone gained and their change in physical activity levels. So throughout the course of the study, when they look at the average, so studies, we have to realize studies report on means, which are averages of the group population. So the average participant in the study increased their NEAT by 300 calories in response to this 1,000-calorie overfeeding. But there was one person that increased it by 700 calories and another who decreased their NEAT. So this sad bastard got fed 1,000 calories over and actually downregulated his energy expenditure and gained more fat in the process, which is why there was such a difference in fat gain between subjects. But overall, when we look at the average individual here, 2/3 of the increases in their total daily energy expenditure was shown to be due to increased non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which was directly associated with changes in their fidgeting, the maintenance of their posture, and other physical activities of daily life within this metabolic ward. Now, keep in mind, this was not a free living study, so they weren't out in normal environment. They couldn't exercise. If they were walking around a laboratory, essentially. So this was all done pretty much subconsciously. So these changes in NEAT accounted for a 10-fold difference in fat storage that occurred and directly predicted resistance to fat gain with overfeeding. So what they found was that as we overeat, activation of NEAT dissipates or burns excess energy to preserve leanness, and that a failure to activate NEAT, so if you don't move more, may result in more readily gaining fat. So this difference, this shows that how different people respond to energy intake coming in is essentially what will happen with the calories that they take in and how much body fat they gain, which is why NEAT is so important. Because keep in mind, guys, this was a controlled study in a laboratory setting. But as we increase calories and we're in the free living world, we're going through our day-to-day basis, we can be more active, we can move more, and we can offset some of that body fat gain and really make sure that we're partitioning those nutrients properly through increasing our NEAT, increasing our steps, and doing things that are going to help to better facilitate those calorie increases and turn them into lean body mass.
Yeah, I documented last year, after we did the podcast with you, you're like, hey, did you know about the, which we talked about before, God, why is the name escaping me? The group of people, the Amish. The Amish. And I was like, well, hell, I'm going to try it. And I set my food and I just literally did 15 or 18,000 steps a day. And I got in some of the best shape of my life. From just doing that. I didn't touch food at all for the entire 13 weeks. I dropped it the last 10 days to make weight into my class.
Let's look at the other correlation. You kept up with the steps post-diet, not to the same extent, but you kept up a pretty high expenditure and you were able to increase your calories. And you just commented on the fact that you're losing weight on a higher calorie intake now. And you were leaner throughout this whole off season, especially during that 75 hard, than I've ever seen you in an offsetting or off season scenario. And I'm sure you were eating well. So we have to consider the fact that it isn't your basal metabolic rate, Jeff. You are the same individual, probably have around the same level of muscle mass. It's not like you added a substantially higher amount into your metabolic rate, but it was the rest of the other components of your total daily energy expenditure, 100%. Especially your NEAT, that contributed to your ability to eat more, stay lean. And that's why I'm so into this energy flux, is because it is just leveraging. I'm pulling levers on this total daily energy expenditure, and I'm trying to get people to eat more, move more, and really live a life of abundance.
I agree. 100%. Dude, I think we knocked it out of the park on this one. What we'll do is we'll go by, guys. If you got any feedback or anything we didn't cover really well, you want to explain, let us know. Next week, we're going to be doing the application, and we could tie up some stuff that Brandon and I maybe want to as well. But next week, we're going to get into the application side of metabolism and go from there. But B, where can everybody find you at, man? Where can everybody give you a follow real quick?
Absolutely. So guys, feel free to reach out to me at @BrandonDeCruz_ on Instagram, or for any email inquiries, please reach out to me at bdecruzfitness@gmail.com.
Guys, I'm Jeff Unbreakable Black on Instagram. Give me a follow. Be sure to chat with me. Some of you guys have already chatted with me. It's been cool to have some conversations back and forth. I'm here to always serve. That's why I like doing is just getting to randomly talk to people. It's fun. It's where social media is cool. If you're interested in working with me, Jeff at relentlessforever.com. And also, if you guys are interested in doing in-person training, I'm just saying that my gym is growing explosively well, and I'll be doing another one. So I'm always looking to recruit other people to come in. So if you're interested, feel free to talk to me about that too. But be sure to leave us a review, share us. In the meantime, guys, we'll see you all next week. We appreciate it. Thanks.